Public Speaking Project presents Citing Sources in Your Speech by Julie Schmutz and Lisa Schreiber, Ph.D. Voice talent by Jill Sabarbro, with Morgan Hartrampt as the media production specialist. Say you are writing a speech about astronauts. As you write your speech, most of the research material you find sounds familiar, so you figure it is common knowledge. For instance, you find a source that states astronauts grow taller in space. You also find a source that talks about how the equipment that is to be used in space is often tested first underwater. You decide not to cite space.com, NASA, or the other sources you use in your speech, or to include them in your bibliography. Unfortunately, your professor will have to give you a failing grade because what you presented was not your work. Most of us are familiar with the term plagiarism, which is when you use someone else's words without giving them credit. This is an unethical speech writing practice because you are deceiving your audience. You are leading them to believe that the information you are providing comes from your own experience or original research, when that is not really the case. Citing your sources is also important because it establishes your credibility. Without source citations, your audience has no way of knowing if your information is trustworthy, or if you are just making things up on the spot. Mentioning your sources will not only help the audience know your information is valid, but it will also show them that you came prepared to present your speech. In this module, we will only have time to give a brief overview of citing sources in your speech. For more information on citing sources, check out the chapter called Supporting Your Ideas in our free online textbook, Public Speaking, the Virtual Text, which can be found at www.publicspeakingproject.org. The purpose of this module is to show you how to give credit to the sources you find for your speech. To start with, we will discuss what a citation is. Then, we will talk about how to cite 6 different types of sources, including books, magazines, websites, interviews, newspapers, and journals. First, let's talk about what a citation is. A citation is a verbal reference to your source of information, which might be a published source or an authority. Citations go along with your supporting materials, and they are used to help clarify, illustrate, or prove your points. Citations should acquaint the audience with the specifics of your sources by listing things like author or institution, title, date, and so on. Later in this module, we will talk about the correct way to verbally cite various types of sources. Citations should always be mentioned during your speech, and they should come from a reliable source. They should come directly before or after you share the information. This will help give you some authority on the subject, and it will increase the audience's tendency to take you seriously. If your speech is on optimal pet health, and you get your information from your 10-year-old sister who loves cats, your audience will have trouble believing what they are hearing. A better source would be a pet care book written by a veterinarian. You should also cite multiple sources to further establish your credibility. If you give a 10-minute speech on peanut allergies and only cite one source, the audience will wonder if you did much research at all. When citing sources, you may choose to take a direct quote from someone, or you may choose to paraphrase. A direct quotation is when you use someone else's idea word for word, but you give the author credit. For instance, you may say, in the words of Albert Einstein, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." You must attribute the sentiments to the original speaker to avoid plagiarism. On the other hand, paraphrasing is when you restate someone else's ideas in your own words, and saying things simply is best for general audiences. So, instead of saying, Billington states that buildup of fatty residue causes arterial blockage and could lead to a myocardial infarction, you might say, Billington explains that fatty foods can lead to heart attacks. Note, too, that this paraphrase is much more concise and understandable to listeners. Now let's talk about different types of sources and how to cite them. One important thing to remember is to vary your source introductions. If before 10 different sources you say, according to, the audience may become bored by the repetition and tune you out. Try using phrases like, in this book, author Tim Jones states, or the New York Times published an article that found. Different sources require different types of citations. When citing a book, you should include the first and last names of the authors and a source qualifier to go with the authors. This will give your audience a better idea of what kind of authority your information has. Your citation should also include the title and year of publication. An example of a book citation would be, according to the book Assessing for Learning, published in 2010, Violet Harada and Joan Yoshina, noted professors at the University of Hawaii and Manoa, state that when a book has more than two authors, you state the first author listed, and then say co-authors. For instance, Nexos is a book on the Spanish language that was published in 2013. Written by Sherry Spain Long, noted professor at the University of Alabama, and her co-authors, it mentions that when citing a journal article, you list the author or authors, the title of the journal, the title of the article, and the date the issue was published. For example, in the December 2012 edition of Prevention, author and food director Lori Powell wrote an article titled Power Soups that describes healthy soup recipes to increase your energy. Magazines and newspapers are known as periodicals, and these citations are fairly similar to journal citations. You need the periodical name, the article title, the author or authors, and the date it was published. If citing a magazine, you might say, Time magazine published an article in March of 2013 by Brian Walsh called Grow a Burger. In this article, Walsh talks about growing meat in laboratories instead of raising animals on farms. If citing a newspaper, you might say, as stated by Angela Columbus in an article called Test for Selling State Stores in the March 2013 issue of Philadelphia Inquirer, Governor Corbett is sending word that he intends to take no prisoners. Websites are a little different, since many don't have any authors listed. For these sites, you will just list the name of the website or its sponsoring institution, the date that it was last edited, and the section of the website that you used. If you were giving a speech about cancer, your citation might be, in the Learn About Cancer section of the website for the American Cancer Society, last updated in 2013, the section on ovarian cancer says that in the T1 stage of cancer, the tumor is limited to one or both ovaries. Sometimes your sources won't be in print. Interviews, for instance, can be very informative. To cite an interview, you should include the date, the name of the interviewer, the name of the person being interviewed, and qualifiers for each. An example of an interview citation would be, Piers Morgan, CNN correspondent, conducted an interview with former President Bill Clinton on September 25, 2012, and found that Clinton is eligible to be president of Ireland and France. So to review, an oral citation is a way to give credit to your source of information. Citing is crucial in order to avoid plagiarism and to speak ethically. The way you cite sources varies from source to source. While most citations require authors, titles, and dates, some sources require additional details. Citing sources will help you improve your public speaking skills, and it will help you better inform your audience. Remember, citing sources is about being honest about the sources of your information. And as Bo Bennett says, for every good reason there is to lie, there is a better reason to tell the truth. Thank you for visiting the Public Speaking Project's virtual classroom. To view other modules about speech writing, go to www.publicspeakingproject.org.